Beloved, precious rose hearts of the Radiant Rose Academy, Akasha is with you, and I hold you in my own heart flame of my sacred fire, rose love. And as I am with you this evening, I ask you to understand that due to activities of the Diamond Heart Conclave, that all of us, including myself, will be capable of releasing. I have always been capable of releasing. It's a matter of having the authority to do so. Capable of releasing a feeling of our presence that is to be absolutely tangible to you, that you may just soak those Ascended Master feelings in, that they may add to the radiance of your own glorious God presence and assist you throughout all your days of freedom that are your days that are counting now. God bless you. Indeed, my own feelings of conclave, and I am very happy when my feelings are matched with the same feelings coming from many of the students. That feeling being that this Diamond Heart Conclave in Montreal exceeded the expectations and fulfillment of all previous conclaves. And as the students themselves, many have said that they feel this conclave raised the bar. That is a term in your world. Yes. And the conclave reached another level. And I am so grateful for this, because all levels and passages that we move through must have experiential evidence in your lives, and especially in the days that follow. I thank you. I understand that we are yet to have our miracle class this month, and that comes, not this weekend, but the following weekend. Yes, and of course, I would remind you that I have extended an invitation to Jesus the Christ to step into the miracle class at any time that he wishes. And from Montreal to Vancouver, he will come again and extend a golden platter of his ascended Jesus Christ love to each of you. God bless you. There are, precious hearts, conditions you yet face. Some of those conditions are created by yourself. Other conditions are created out in the world, by the world, and by very large groups that seem to have governance, authority, and control over world events. It is not my desire to speak a moment into potential dramatic changes that are coming, especially the financial one. It's just not something I do, and I have no plans to begin. I leave that up to a son if he feels speaking into the potential of events coming forth, that is his place to do so. Rather, I wish to take a deep breath with you and just breathe into all the means that you as creator beings, in cooperation with us, are creating, in which, as you go forth, you may overcome conditions mentally, emotionally, physically, that you yourself are consciously or unconsciously creating in your own lives that may not be producing the kind of perfect living days that you'd like to have, or whether it is facing conditions that are out in the world that seem to be beyond your control, whatever they might be. And I would simply include whatever this thing is that's coming in your world regarding world finances. That's all I will say. The inner activity of God in each of you must meet the outpouring of the outer activity when you communicate, when you find your voice, and you communicate with your presence and all of us. And then again, that must once again meet the inner silent activity. And all that we are seeking to assist you in is the fulfillment of the inner activity that leads in the next moment to the outer activity of what you know is the ancient art of decreeing, sealed by going back into the inner activity of the golden silence. That is the most ideal platform. And in the various 7 sacred moments and practitioners' treatment, where you are teaching yourself of entering into the sacred stillness, the sacred silence, the absence of thoughts. One purpose, a personal and direct contact with your God being. So that in that contact, the individualized presence of God, which is your true self, may flow once again out into your outer consciousness. Then if that is followed by entering into the outer activity and communicating and decreeing to your presence, to angels, to ascended beings, to goddesses, and great cosmic beings, and so forth, releasing your mighty decrees. And when you are finished, returning into the eternal silence. And holding that eternal silence in the absence of thought. That is the most ideal spiritual platform. It is everything that we have been working towards in all our studies, in all our classes, in all our events. In years past, you have discovered, you've studied, you opened your mind, your consciousness, you've expanded, you have awareness that you, as an intelligent species upon your planet, that you belong to a hierarchy of sentient, intelligent beings throughout your solar system, your galaxy, and even beyond the universe to the great central sun itself. In discovering your spiritual hierarchy, you have discovered that you can communicate with them. And even though you are not yet capable of carrying and delivering that communication through your decrees directly to them, you know, you have discovered that you have a higher discerning intelligence. You have a higher mental body. You have a higher consciousness that receives all of your decrees. Remember, your faculties are actually owned and governed by your higher consciousness. In today's world, we have to refer to your divine faculties and your outer faculties. If your outer faculties transformed, then there wouldn't be two sets of faculties. You would be capable of using outer hearing, inner hearing, outer sight, inner sight, outer communications, telepathy, and so forth. And so with the understanding that your higher intelligence knows everything that you are doing every moment of every day. With the realization, remember, you studied, you became aware that in the descent from grace, that state of higher consciousness lived on the earth, your higher consciousness had to loan the use of the faculties to the outer self. Because 13 million years and a few, there was a disconnect to the higher intelligence. So what was set into motion was that during your waking state, when you weren't physically asleep, your higher intelligence would loan your faculties to you the moment you wake up, the moment you go to when you go to bed, and the moment you enter into sleep. Those faculties are returned to the higher mental body. This is an ongoing process every day. The mass of the people know nothing of these things. So I only wish to give a little more context here so that when I say to you that your higher intelligence knows when you are speaking to your presence. It knows when you are speaking to the angels. It knows when you are decreeing to the masters. It knows that you do not yet have the built-up power, the expanded flames, to get that communication into the next dimension. So it takes your decrees and delivers them for you. You would be wise to remember, oh my goodness, my own higher intelligence is watching me every moment. You want to remember, precious hearts, everything that the masters teach you, they live by those things by sacred oath. Your own higher discerning intelligence is incapable of judging you. Incapable, just as any angel and any ascended master. That the perception of judgment just does not exist in the higher intelligent realms. So, this is what is the ideal that we're moving towards. That ideal requires structure. It is said that there are some who are born talented, while the mass are not. Well, maybe that may be, and if a person is born talented, I can assure you that it has taken many lifetimes of right desire to build a momentum that produces that talent. Because the truth is, everyone is talented. Creativity is infinite. And if there are doors that are blocking that talent or creativity, then that's what is happening, and that's all that's happening. And those doors are nothing more than human doors waiting to be opened. So, with that understanding, I wish each of you to realize that as we move forth, the greatest balancing in your fields of consciousness, that's the best way for me to say it. The greatest balancing in your fields of consciousness is a great activity that will be gifted to each of you by receiving the golden platter of the ascended Jesus Christ love. For that to occur, each of you must do your part, and that is to love, to desire balance. No extremes, no going off course, to hold divine, harmonic, creative, intelligent balance in all receiving and expressing fields of consciousness. Now, what I did here was I avoided using the word mental body, feeling body, physical body, because I wish you to expand that we attach ourselves to the reality that you are beings of consciousness. And we are fast approaching a place where the mental body, the physical body, and the feeling body is less handicapped. I suppose that's a funny way of saying it, but there's a point there. And that's how you get around the mind feeling things. You say it in an almost, there's less handicap. So human beings' mental, physical, and feeling bodies are handicapped. They're handicapped through perceptions, beliefs, emotions that cripple the emotional body from fully functioning. You understand. That degree of the multi-body system being handicapped is becoming less and less and less. So if you have a desire building to be perfectly balanced in your mind and in your heart, in your mental and in your feeling, and have a body, a physical body that you're looking after, and the light is increasing every day in the mind. The love is increasing every day in the feeling. As that builds, there is then an inherent, natural crossover where the love starts building in the mental body and the light starts building in the emotional body. As that occurs, your faculties start being corrected and perfected, and a thought you might consider is that creative spark, creative reception, creative expression requires, whether expressing through the mind, emotion, or body, such as through the body, such as being a ballet dancer. Those forms of creative, because you can be recipient, receiving creative impulses, yes? In expressing creative impulses, all of them require, or I would say in your octave, the way the outer self is constructed requires, demands use of your faculties. So here we appreciate our faculties. How many times have you said, I won't say in a day, I'll say in your life, that you just took a moment to be grateful for the gift of sight? Maybe you saw a blind person walking, and maybe that just made you just inwardly say to yourself, I'm just so grateful for the gift of sight. So all of these faculties, they are the platforms when there is more of a harmonic balance between the mental, physical, and feeling. These faculties become paths, openings, reception, transmission for different types of creativity. As all of this unfolds in your future days, I'll go back to my point now. The coming importance of greater balance in all known used fields of consciousness. I must say all known used fields of consciousness, because there are some fields that you know of consciousness that you're not using yet. And there are also some fields of consciousness that you don't know that you're not using yet. But all of that will increase. The more you light up, the more God flows into your consciousness, the more your faith and conviction and power of entering inwards, of going outwards. And key to all of this is a right desire that I am desiring each of you will position into, and that is how important it is to monitor yourself, to observe yourself, to do your best, to be balanced between the mental, the emotional. Let's say it another way. To be balanced between your mind and your heart. And then how important it is to be fully present. So in just that last couple statements, would you consider worrying would throw you off or create a slight imbalance? Yes. Would you consider allowing yourself to become stressed would throw you a little off balance? Yes. Will you be honest and say that there are times you've been so emotionally wrenched that you couldn't think a clear thought? Yes. Will you be honest and acknowledge that there are times times where you get too mental, where too much thinking? Now, I would like to say, in the evolution of this student body, there's two different things, two different environments in which we make a mistake. We can make a mistake because we may be not fully giving ourselves. We may not be showing up to do our best. We may not be as responsible as our life would expect us to. And on. There's a list. And as a result, you might make mistakes. Then there's an environment where it's important to you. It's important to you that you that you do your best, that you show up, that you be responsible to the tasks that life and by agreement with others that you show up for, yes? Now, this is where it gets a little wobbly as to do all of those things, especially the latter, and maintain your balance. If you have a situation, you have two individuals, there's communication, and one individual shows up to do one part, another individual shows up to do another part. And when those two parts come together, you have some manifestation. You have some creation. Understood? If one person does their part dutifully and beautifully, and the other person doesn't show up, the person that does their part will not hold balance if they start stewing and worrying and being concerned because the other person didn't show up to get the part that they fulfilled. Did you follow that?
Yes.
Because as you all evolve, you're going to naturally do your best. And you're naturally going to attract people to you that you'll interact with that are going to be doing their best as well. Remember, you are not in an octave of perfection, nor is it your responsibility, nor is it your right to expect perfection of another. It is your right, depending how far you wish to go, to expect perfection of yourself. And if you show up and you do what's asked of you, but someone else doesn't show up and they're connected to the piece, you have employees working together all the time, right? Now you showed up and do your piece. If the other person doesn't show up and do their part, and you move yourself into a mess, a stress, you are responsible for throwing yourself off balance, not the other person that didn't show up. Do you see this?
Yes.
Do you agree with me?
Yes.
So as we move forward, it's grooming that outer eye, that outer sense of I, because guess what, precious hearts? This outer sense of I that you call personality and that you function in this world, it's getting ready to do something ever so precious. It's getting ready to meet and greet the inner I, the majestic I. Now some will say, when the outer I meets the inner I, when the little self meets the big self within, that there's a washing away of the little self. I have, in observing this, I must now start coming closer to you, but I won't come into your outer world. That's a son's job. And as I come closer to you in this awareness, there are some things in metaphysics that I, who I am, say, I'd like to massage this. Because in the sacred moments, in the stillness of the moment, you are God, you're going to release God into your outer consciousness. Well, who is this God? It is your divine self. It is the big capital S self. So as the little self is doing all these things, the journey home, coming back, and in the silence meets and greets the great God self and remains there until you have a feeling that's enough. Get up, go on about your day. So I have a question. And all that you could foresee if days followed and there was a pattern and you were consistent and you were gaining a momentum, is little self blending with big self, is big self blending with little self. Which? The latter. Yes, and then blending, and then big self is coming out. But this is what is important. That you do not buy into an awkward emotion that you may lose a sense of self. Because in those silent moments, as God is moving out into your consciousness, there's an alchemical blending of the seeming two selves, of which there are not. And in that blending, it's like the prodigal son who comes home to the father's house, and he holds them, and as the father holds him, he receives everything again. There's a blending. And then when you go, now, that's in the silence. The outer self is blending because you're fully conscious. You're there. You're in the silence. You've suspended thoughts. You can feel all this alchemical interaction. You can feel sensations. Sometimes there's light. You're blending with that. And then when you have feeling, it's time to come out of the silence and go on about your day. You gently bring yourself up. And you get up and you go on about your day. Now, the capital S self is coming out more and blending with the little self out into your world. So that it's not that one gets washed away. They're blending with the two until eventually there's only one. Jesus said, "He that seeth me seeth God the Father." Well, the God the Father that Jesus was speaking at that point was the individualized presence of God. The presence. It is so important that we lose no opportunities. I know this year, and especially since the Diamond Heart Conclave in 2014, I know this year has come with some challenges. And it's, as you would say in your world, a hard pill to swallow when you come this far and you can say, "I didn't see that coming." Do you understand this expression? More and more, a son is giving me expressions, and I'm saying now, "A son, you're right about this, aren't you?" And so sometimes I'm asking you if he's got these expressions correct, where something happens, you didn't see it coming, right? In all those things, you can be certain that they are what you chose. You chose to. You have chosen all the dynamic players that are going to show up in your life in your final days, where your awakening leads to your becoming the individualized presence of God. You have chosen the final players that will show up on your stage, and those players aren't just individuals. They're also experiences. And that is why it's so important to break the hypnotic spell. It's so important to ask yourselves, as you study, as you come to class, as you listen to the recordings, to ask yourself a question that you might like to avoid. How much am I becoming this ideal person that is taught. Let's say it in another way of your world. Am I living these teachings? Do I go to class? Do I listen to subscriptions? Go off to work? And within 3 hours, I'm stressed out because of all the things I'm facing. You see, that's not going to work. It's not going to work at all. It'll just come right in your face. And it's supposed to, so that you'll take a deep breath. Okay, what am I forgetting today? Because it's okay to forget for a while longer. Did I forget to choose peace? Did I forget to think with my heart? Did I forget moments during my day where I finished work, I'm about to go home, and before I go home, I say to myself, now everything in my mind, everything that I've been addressing today, I just drop all that thinking, all those thoughts down into my heart and let the presence look after them so that tomorrow when I show up at work, my presence has already got its name on all those things. You understand what I mean by that. So what are we forgetting? Am I forgetting to spend time in my heart? Am I spending too much time in my mind? You know, precious hearts, I hope this doesn't happen to you. We will continue to go into the silence in the two means that have been provided. And if you don't practice that during the day, one of the things that you might ask yourself, when's the last time I went into the 7 sacred moments? When's the last time I went into the practitioner's treatment to bring God out into my reality? Oh my gosh, it's been 2 days. Maybe that's why things aren't going as smooth. Maybe that's why things aren't flowing. Maybe that's why I'm not communicating. Oh my God, it's not them, it's me. I'm not communicating well. I'm not communicating respectfully. I'm not communicating with gratitude. You see, we're getting closer now. Everything desires to be fine-tuned. Because Jesus Christ revealed something at this conclave, and there's a big if. Students who attended conclave, they think it's an automatic now. That there's going to be some phenomena at the Diamond Heart Conclave in 2016. It shows we can be selective with our hearing. When in 2 transmissions at conclave, the big if word was emphasized several times. If the students can shift a few things, then this will allow the master to do something that would be in the degree of what the world would call phenomena. Now, as the students go back to their transmissions and say, what was that if? Well, I will perhaps give you the biggest if. And it's amazing. It's making a shift. It's a shift that only you can dictate to yourself with Jesus' guidance. It's a shift that requires you programming yourself. And it's all about vulnerability. It's all about being vulnerable. The Master Jesus asked at Conclave, if you could shift, if you could change something, if you could sign up for a new truth, if you could program yourself, covenant, what would it be like? On the subject of vulnerability, what would it be like if you were only vulnerable to God? That's what Jesus asked. So let's just say it in a little different way. What would it be like if, now think of vulnerability and think of the word susceptibility, susceptible, being susceptible, and think of the negative and positive ways, depending on context, of how those words have been used. Now I ask you, so Jesus asks you, do you think you can shift? Do you think you can program yourself? That for me, there's only one vulnerability going on in me. I'm vulnerable to God. So let's just shift that again and use the word susceptible. Do you think your life could change dramatically if every day you were susceptible to God? Now you know we're talking about the presence that beats your heart. The presence that instead of being a little flame, instead of being consciousness that is parenthesized and therefore not fully expressing perfection, would your life change dramatically if every day you were susceptible to God? Sometimes, and when this sometimes happens, it doesn't just happen. It happens because someone's worked for it in previous lifetimes. Sometimes you're born with a talent. Sometimes you are born with an expanded side of you that your parents don't know what to do with. Sometimes you are born and there is evidence as a child that you have a strong spiritual side to you that demands evolving, that demands attention. I have a question. You know some of his life. He has come to you in that embodiment. Would you agree, considering his life, considering how young he turned to the church, how young he received the authority from Rome to start his own monastic order? Would you say that St. Francis was born being susceptible and vulnerable to God? Absolutely. And you know, he said in his own life, in the final days as he laid in bed, being anointed with the most sacred essential oils of that day, no doctor could come up with why Francis was failing, except clearly his body was failing. And the doctors at that time could only say Francis did not look after his body. Francis loved everything but his body. He took it for granted that his love for Jesus Christ, his love for children, his love for the animals and Sister Moon and these things, that would carry his body. But he didn't. And then he came back as Kutumi, the great master, and said, our love must not miss anything out. Is love complete if love is vacant in one area of our life? Would our love be complete? And it was vacant in looking after his body. Sometimes, Francis, and you don't do this. If you're a young person, your garment's still growing. When Francis was 22 years old, sometimes he would go 5 days without eating. He'd drink fluids to keep functioning. So now I have a bigger question. If Francis' love was complete and it wasn't vacant in any one place in his life, do you think he would have used religion to bring out his spirituality? Or do you think that absolute driving love might have driven him like Jesus to go on a journey and find a truth even much greater than the Vatican could offer?
Yes.
All of these things. I know, by the nature of how I've spoken this evening, I know that some of you may feel that I'm going to have to listen to this again. Sometimes it's ideal to speak in a way that's not confusing, but really makes you relax the intellect and listen so that you can integrate it much deeper. Of the various things that I've spoken into this evening, you're moving forward. You're becoming the light. You're having available to you every divine feeling depends upon maintaining balance, being fully present in your body, looking after your body, and balance between your mind and heart. Depends on it. So vital. Can you consider this? The Academy has long identified 144 qualities of divine love that come with you in your feeling body. Can you imagine that your head and your heart are so balanced? And what does that mean? Let's not let that thought just linger. What does that mean when your head and your heart is so balanced? You are incapable of stressing. You are incapable of worrying. You are always capable of having the right thought of anything that you must do. And with that balance comes the resurrection of the feeling body. Is charity, is it a quality of divine love?
Yes.
We can talk about charity. We can talk about a lot of the feelings. But do we really know what charity feels like? We understand charity as an expression. Charity is a doing. We can attach it to faith and hope. It gives us a better understanding. Can you imagine that you have a place that you arrive and you are so balanced in your head-heart matrix, so balanced in your mental, emotional matrix, that in the moment you ask yourself, what is it that I most require in this moment? And in your awareness comes a feeling of charity. That comes into your awareness immediately because you ask yourself, what is it that I most require right now? And in your awareness, the answer is a feeling of charity. You say to yourself, wonderful. Let me just focus through the heart into the feeling charity. And I call that feeling of charity forth in full expression. I chose the feeling charity. Now remember, charity is the 13th goddess. She is the composite of all qualities of the 12. Charity is the one quality that will bring you back into balance faster than any other quality. There are cylinders in your heart. They control the pulse. And if one of those cylinders begin to not work in companionship, not work in unity, and if one of those cylinders don't accept the cylinder that's the leader, the team leader, and work in harmony, you can have a pulse that goes skyrocketing. So just as there's one cylinder in the heart that tells the other cylinders what to do, and the movement and the heartbeat, the pulse, there is one cylinder in the feeling body that can bring the mental and emotional into divine balance. But you have to consciously breathe it. You have to breathe it about 9 times, and that's charity. I will not ever seek to guide you, mentor you, move you in a direction without facilitating a means to get there. You do not require to be perfectly balanced in your mind, heart, and how you use your mind, heart. What's the ideal? Mind and heart is a cycle that's constantly looping with each other. And both have an intelligence. Sometimes the heart goes first, sometimes the mind goes first. Sometimes the mind backs off, lets the heart move in, because the heart's intelligence is more ideal to whatever it is that you must face. It's a divine relationship. It's kind of like that relationship that is broken in the pineal gland. The relationship between the two hormones, the two hormonal frequencies, serotonin and melatonin. I wonder if you would get this question right. Of the melatonin, serotonin loop that does the figure 8 inside the pineal gland, of serotonin, which activity does it oversee? Mind or heart?
The mind.
Yes. What your world does know is serotonin is go, 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 happy, happy, happy. But go, it's the great overseer of overseers. You've got a lot of team leaders in the body, and it's the team leader of team leaders. And it oversees adrenaline as well as many other faculties. So the serotonin is the masculine mental hormonal frequency to the pineal gland. And the melatonin is the heart. It could have been obvious to you because in this whole journey of mind-heart, which is the one that you've had not enough of? The heart. And what do you think you're taking more melatonin for? To balance that frequency. So you've got 1,000 helpers all coming together in this academy in everything that you are studying, precious hearts. So do remember, you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be perfectly balanced between the mental, the emotional, the mind, the heart. But charity and the feeling of charity as it rises up in you. It is the front runner. It is the foregoer to essential harmlessness. If charity is out in front, you cannot be harmful to yourself. You cannot be harmful to another. And in whatever condition you have to face in yourself, or whatever condition you have to face in the outer world, charity will make sure that you have everything you require. And if that is a truth, and it is a truth, no matter what comes down the pipe in terms of the economy, why would you be concerned if you have charity? Has this pulled together?
Yes.
Love charity, breathe charity, welcome charity. Sometimes the inner requires a little movement in the outer to bring on the greater inner activity. So, sometimes an act of charity, throwing a 25-cent piece in a tin cup, these little acts because you're moving. One of the things that helps bring the inner activity, the feeling of charity, is to find something to do that starts moving that energy. Do you understand? Thank you, beloved precious hearts, for allowing me to have this conversation with you this evening. Ultimately, you must come to know that whatever happens in the world, you are safe. You are looked after. And this messenger told me that Kathleen pointed out to him today, reminded him, that the first two accredited messengers of a dispensation, Godfrey and Laodice Ray King, you understand?
Yes.
They lived through the Great Recession. And during that Great Recession was the building years of one of the largest student bodies of spirituality this world has seen in modern times. God bless you, precious hearts. I thank you.